is an origin reading for the Seer. So I actually received the code name last night because I was going to do the reading, and then there were all these construction people here. So I'm going to go ahead and surround you in some protective space for the beginning of the reading. And I am using my large quartz here. I have a couple of other crystals here with me as well. I have my smoky quartz, and then I have peacock ore. So these were the three that I drew for this reading. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use the smoky quartz. Okay, so I always surround myself first. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and surround you a second time. Actually, I think I'm just going to work on clearing a couple of these areas. Okay, especially on the right side, there are, it just feels like surrounding you in the protective space. I noticed this last night too. Surrounding you in the protective space, it feels like, especially on the right side, it's like very slow coming down with the light. But I'm not exactly bumping into specific blocked areas until I came around the front and the back. And then there was a specific area. The right side tends to have to do a lot with manifestation, and the feet do as well. The feet often, they can have to do with path, they can have to do with things manifesting. But being that there's also a block on the right, and there's the block there, it was kind of around the ankle, shins kind of area, and at the back. And the back tends to have to do with our emotional support. It can have to do with family. It can have to do with finances. So some of it felt specifically like sometimes there can be a block in the flow when it comes to your relationships as well. But it starts right at the head. because that's where I almost always start, unless I'm doing a chakra scan. When I'm not doing a chakra scan, I always tend to start typically at the head and come down. So like I was saying, there aren't really many specific blocked areas. It's just kind of the whole like right side coming down. Just feels like it's more slow. So in other words, like the energy isn't flowing as quickly, in other words. And it just feels like kind of in general, things probably tend to manifest more slowly, especially in some areas of your life. And then, like I was saying, the back, it tends to have to do with your emotional support, and it can have to do with finances as well. But specifically, there was something about relationships coming in there, and that isn't always flowing in the way that you would want it to, and it just has to do with this block. So one thing your guides are pointing out right away is your solar plexus. Or not your solar plexus, sorry, your sacral. I'm like clearing and speaking at the same time, so. But the sacral also has to do a lot with emotions. It can have to do with fear and trauma, and still this feeling of like being supported, or not being supported. They're also pointing out the root chakra though, to work on the root chakra. And this has to do with your stability, and the root chakra has a lot to do with finances also. And whether or not, see, people, if someone has any kind of issue with finances, it tends to be related to the root chakra. A lot of times they have some kind of block coming up in the root chakra, for the reason that the root chakra really has to do with your survival, but it also has to do with your ability to thrive here on this planet and in this 3D realm. It has to do with physicality, but it also has to do with merging spirituality and the physical as well. So it has a lot to do with grounding, and it has a lot to do with grounding your spiritual nature here. And the only way you can do that is basically the root chakra. Just like the sacral, it can also hold traumas, and it can hold pessimism, it can hold negativity about the place that you're in, and it can also hold like anxiety and feelings of worry and things like that, because it it also holds on to feelings from childhood. Like if there was any feeling of you not being safe here at all, or you feeling neglected at all, that's going to be there in the root chakra. And that can tend to just kind of block things up when it comes to physically grounding, and when it comes to manifesting and energies moving through. So those are all some kind of general things that are just related to these specific chakras. There's something going on here with the throat as well. Okay. Okay, at this point, I'm wishing that I had like a more blue crystal. Like, I have some, but I feel like it would need to specifically be like lapis lazuli or azurite. I don't have either of those. Peacock ore has like every color in it. This definitely has blue, purple, it has gold in it, pink in it. So it has to do with cleansing out every single chakra. So there's this energy in your throat and also at the crown here where it feels like you're connected to a higher purpose, and it feels like specifically with your throat, like you are a speaker in some way, like you have something to say, and it feels like you're very connected to like ancient wisdom, and this is meant to be flowing through you more. But here there's something in there. It feels like I want to almost feels like the crystal almost like wants to hit against something. Get it to like remove, get something to clear out. But at the same time, the throat chakra, um, it's actually functioning pretty well. It's still spinning and everything, and a lot of this really has to do with just gifts in the throat chakra, this area. There's a lot of gifts in this area. It has to do with speaking, but it's also connected to these two upper chakras here. And the throat is a very creative, artistic zone as well. And so a lot of intuitive people have gifts with the throat center. So it also has a lot to do with your psychic abilities, your intuition, and that really makes sense because it's right between the heart chakra and the third eye. So naturally, it's going to have to do with those areas also. Because you can only express something intuitive that's coming through the throat chakra if your throat chakra is in tune with those abilities also. Okay, so I'm just asking what's with the block here with again, this has to do with grounding. So this is just this general idea that things get stuck or they move more slowly or you have trouble grounding certain ideas. You guys are giving me this word graft, almost like if you were almost like if you were like grafting something into or like carving something into like your skin, or almost like a tattoo or something. You're trying to get it to go into the skin, and it has to like it has to go into your skin and be able to stay there. So it would almost be if like you are trying to almost burn something into your skin, and it's like your skin like won't absorb it. It won't take this property into itself. So this block just has to do with, they're giving me that word again, like almost like grafting or like merging. Where like two things can concretely become the same thing, and two things can concretely unify. And where physicality and spirituality are not these like separate things, and we have trouble concretely bringing them together in the same space. So you have all this wisdom and everything, but the blocks come in when it has to do with physically implementing them, or physically putting them out or speaking them out. However you're meant to do that. It doesn't necessarily mean that you are specifically saying them, like you're speaking in a microphone or something and you're saying certain things. It definitely can. But the throat chakra has to do in general with expressing something, and you're putting it out. So it can be writing, it can be speaking, it can be another way. But there is an energy with you specifically about writing and speaking. And specifically that you have something to say and you have something to express. Okay, so just going into this chakra in here. The crown chakra. Again, it is functioning. It is functioning. It can spin, and I'm sort of spinning it around a little bit, but then it's kind of spinning in this almost kind of lopsided way. And so again, there's this feeling from it, this strange kind of feeling from it, like how does it physically ground its information? So you must have some trouble connecting to the physical in some ways. But again, there's this feeling of relationships coming up where sometimes it's like you view things in such an alternative way and in such a different way that sometimes it can be difficult to connect with others or feel like you understand others or that you're understood by others, but at the same time you have these things to say that need to be gotten out. But connectivity is kind of an issue. And yeah, they're giving me that word, connectivity. Like I would never say connectivity. But it's because of this connection to the physical, and it doesn't mean that you have to go around relating to everybody, because that would be like impossible. And they're saying that would be impossible for a star seed to do. Okay, they're saying star seed, but I'm I'm feeling so many Earth lives with you, though. There's a feeling of so many Earth lives, and at the same time, you don't really have a problem. It's weird because of all these blocks coming up, but at the same time, you don't really have a problem with connecting to Earth or coming to Earth. And in some ways, you have this down because it does feel like you've been here like a lot. Like you've been coming around here for a long time. Okay. But, right. Because this is sort of a general block too. It's not as much like specifically this or that that's coming through. The relationship thing is something a little bit more specific that keeps coming up. But then there's just this general feeling of manifestation, grounding, in this kind of slowness in the aura of things passing through. And some of that can just be, you have been coming and coming, right? And so things can kind of build up after a little while. But even when I got your email, I was picking up on a lot of Earth lives and past lives with you. So your guides are saying that you're an older soul. There's also this feeling from them, almost like you're not like extremely old, like you have like a lot to learn. And I think in their viewpoint, because guides tend to be a lot older than we are, so in their viewpoint, um, because of how old they are, it feels like you're not like extremely old. You have like a lot of things that you can learn. But when it comes to most of the humans around you, and most of these 3D humans, yes, you're definitely an old soul in comparison. They're saying that old soul can mean different things, though. And I think this is part of the reason that this might be coming in this way. They're saying that an older soul can mean different things. Sometimes an old soul literally means, okay, it's like what the Council for the Assistance to Earth teaches is that, okay, yes, energy can never be created or destroyed, and our energy was always there. Energy is always there. However, you can create a spark of consciousness in that energy. And so a soul does have a beginning. That's the only reason that you can say, that's the only reason you can even ask this question. Am I a young soul? Am I an old soul? Am I in the middle somewhere? That's the only reason you can even ask a question like that, because spark of consciousness does occur. You know, it does. There is a moment when an sort of individual spark comes into consciousness of its individuality, and yet it's part of this same vast, infinite energy field that it's always has been, that it's always been connected to. But that's the only reason that we can even differentiate and say young soul, old soul, this, that. But they're saying that this can mean different things, though. Obviously, there's an advantage to being a young soul. There's an advantage to being an old soul. Probably even someone who's in the middle could have some advantages. But what they're saying is that, so there are different ways to look at this. there's an old soul in the way of you literally were like your spark was created just a long time ago, right? Like just an infinite number of years ago or whatever, however you want to say it, very long time ago. And that's why you're an old soul. And maybe you know a lot more for that reason. And then on the other hand, um, someone could have been created that long ago and still be considered young because they're just not moving through blocks and this and that at a certain speed. They're doing it more slowly than most souls would be doing it. And they're saying, and then it kind of goes the other way. So you can be a soul. They're saying that you're not a young soul, but let's say you're a soul that is kind of in the middle as far as when it came to consciousness, right? But they would still call you an old soul for the reason that your consciousness expanded at a faster rate than most. Okay, so this can kind of go multiple ways. So what they're saying though is that like most psychics or someone like that, if you were to go to them, they would just say, yeah, you're an old soul. They would pick up on this energy of the wisdom that you contain and the lives that you have had. And like, for instance, if you've traversed through more lifetimes and you've learned less, okay, or the things that you've learned you applied less, then you would be not time-wise, but when it comes to the wisdom and everything that you've gathered, you would be considered a younger soul than someone who might be younger than you, but they've gone through lifetimes and they have applied more of what they have been learning. So they're saying that there's different ways to look at this question of old soul, young soul. So they're saying that yes, you're an old soul, but that's because of what you've been applying. And they're saying that that's a really good thing because that means that when you are an old soul, in their minds, when it comes to when you actually came into consciousness, which they're saying is kind of tricky. Like you can do that if you're looking at it in a linear way, right? And we tend to process things in a linear way, and they understand that, and they have that understanding too. So they're able to look at it in that way also. But then at the same time, all time is is an illusion, and all time is really the same time, just like all space is really the same space. But in this way of linear time, okay, if they were to consider you a really old soul, by that point, you should have learned like a vast ton. Just because at the speed that you're going now with the lifetimes that you've had, You tend to acquire a lot of information. They're using that word again, grafting. So you tend to seep information in that resonates with you. But at the same time, you're having trouble in this lifetime pulling it down. But there is a feeling like some of that does have to do with past lifetimes, though, because just when you, especially when you have a lot of earth lives, people tend to hold on to blocks and energies that they've picked up, energies that they've gathered. Just because of the amount of lifetimes that you've had in this kind of lower, murkier 3D place. So that's kind of to be expected that you would have something. Plus, there's this feeling like you don't have a lot of breaks, really, where you've gone back to some other planet or some pure vibrational awareness. It feels like you kind of kept coming here and to these lower 3D kind of places for the reason of your growth. And so you're not getting as many breaks. It feels like not only in between lives, some of that it feels like there's a little bit more of a break with, they're saying. But even with that, you're kind of going through short periods. Okay, so this has got to be part of the reason that you're learning so much. It feels almost like you're just choosing to sort of like, it feels like your soul wants to kind of learn things in a certain way where it kind of pushes itself a little bit. But that's natural for your soul to do. So that's not a negative thing. That's what your soul is doing. That's what your soul wants to be doing. But it feels like it wants to learn quickly and gather as much information as it can, but not in some kind of stressed way or even in some really curious way. There isn't a feeling like that. It feels calm, just like this is sort of just the natural flow of your soul to do this. So another thing that the council teaches is, well, they talk about thought forms. You can see our video on that. And basically that is like the spark of a soul. And we create these all the time. And we can be dwelling on fear or dwelling on this or that. But if there's some like higher consciousness, in a sense, like a being who is very, very aware of themselves, and they purposefully create a thought form, or they purposefully create this spark of a soul. So when you are very, very high, you can end up creating something that manifests much more quickly than a thought form, but also in a very positive way. So whoever created you, it feels like whoever was dwelling on this when you came into being, it feels like that has something to do with this natural way that your soul acquires information and naturally just does it more quickly. So there's some like higher being that you are associated with, and they're not coming in with any kind of name or anything like that. It doesn't even really feel like it has a name. It feels kind of nameless. But as it was dwelling on the energy that like sparked your consciousness, there's this feeling of you moving quickly. There's this feeling of you acquiring information and being able to take that into yourself and sort of store it. So it feels like naturally you're going to move more quickly. And just be able to do things at a higher speed, and that's just going to be easy for you. And they're giving you credit for that. They're not saying it all came from, you know, this being that was dwelling on you when you came into consciousness. They are saying, because the thing is, you have to, when you come into being, whatever you're programmed with, you then have to decide as an individual spark, in a sense, individual but connected to all that is, and essentially all that is. But you have to decide, okay, do I toss this? Do I take this and run with it and make it my own? And so that's your choice. And so that doesn't end up going back to this other being as like an idea of you did that. It's more like you posed that. You allowed that. Or even you suggested that, maybe, by what you were dwelling on. But it's still the creation that is going to pick and choose whatever ultimately resonates with them. Because once you come into consciousness, into a spark of consciousness, you have that ability. So they would say that at this point, your current soul's purpose would just be getting through these certain blocks, and that you have this wisdom to be putting out. But it's really about retrieving it and passing it through into the physical in some way, in whatever way that you are meant to do that. Okay, and I can't really go into any more because I'm already going a little far over my time limit here. But that was just like all coming in. Okay, because you gather information. Okay, so there's all this information that's just kind of being like tunneled through. Okay, so I have to end this reading now, though. So thank you very much. The Seer, that was the code name that your guides came through with. So thank you so much, the Seer, for allowing me to connect to your guides and give you this reading. And I truly hope that it benefits you. Thank you very much. Namaste.